Admiral stood on the bridge of the battleship Iron Will and stared at the screen in front of her. The screen showed Earth, her beautiful blue home, floating peacefully in space. But surrounding Earth was something that made her heart beat faster. Ships. Alien ships. 1,500 of them, forming a perfect circle around the planet like a cage made of metal and fire. She had known this day would come. Every human had known. For 300 years, Earth had watched the galaxy and learned its ways. The Helix Confederation ruled over 200 species across thousands of worlds. They did not ask planets to join them. They demanded it, and when a planet refused, they crushed it. Earth had refused. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission," said Lieutenant, a young woman with sharp eyes and steady hands. She was one of the best communications officers in the fleet, and right now, her face was pale. "Put it through," said. Her voice was calm. It had to be. The screen changed. A creature appeared, tall and covered in dark green scales. It had 4 arms and eyes that glowed like hot coals. This was Supreme Commander of the most feared military leader in the galaxy. He had conquered 47 worlds. He had never lost a battle. "Humans of Earth," said. His voice was deep and cold like stones grinding together. I speak for the Helix Confederation. You have refused our generous invitation to join our great alliance. This was foolish. This was arrogant, and now this will be your end." Watched him speak. She noticed how he held himself, how sure he was. He believed this was already over. "You have 6 hours to surrender completely," continued. "Your leaders will give themselves to us. Your weapons will be destroyed. Your people will serve the Confederation. If you refuse, we will burn your world to ash. We will leave nothing, not your cities, not your history, not your children, nothing." The transmission ended. The bridge was silent, could hear her own breathing. She could feel the fear in the room, heavy like a wet blanket. Her crew was scared. They had every right to be. She turned to face them. 20 men and women, all looking at her with wide eyes. "You heard him," said. 6 hours. What do you think we should do?" Nobody answered at first. Then a young officer named spoke up. She was small but fierce, a captain of the Special Operations Unit. "We fight," said simply. "With what?" another officer asked. "They have 1,500 warships, we have 80. The math does not work." Smiled. It was a strange smile, one that confused her crew. "The math they know does not work," she said, "but they do not know all the math." She pressed a button on her console. "Get me President, emergency channel, and contact General and Doctor. Tell them it is time." The next hour moved fast. Across Earth, alarms rang in every city. But these were not alarms of panic. These were signals that had been planned for generations. People moved quickly but calmly to underground shelters, massive bunkers built deep beneath the ground. These bunkers could hold the entire population of Earth. They had food, water, and air for 50 years. The aliens watching from space saw cities empty. They saw humans disappear underground like ants running from rain, laughed when his officers reported this. "They are hiding like insects," he said. "How fitting, it will not save them. Nothing will save them." In a secure room deep beneath the mountains of Korea, President met with his council. He was an old man with white hair and kind eyes, but right now, those eyes were hard as iron. "Report," he said. General stepped forward. He was a big man with a soldier's body and a general's mind. "All civilians are moving to shelters. We will have everyone underground within 4 hours. The bunkers are ready." Doctor spoke next. She was a thin woman with glasses and messy hair, the kind of person who forgot to eat because she was too busy thinking. But she had built weapons that could crack moons in half. "The solar lens array is charged and ready," she said. "The drone fleets are in position. The hidden ships are waiting for your command." President looked at Admiral on the screen. "Admiral, do you believe we can win?" Thought about the question. She thought about her grandmother who had told her stories about the old wars on Earth when humans fought each other. She thought about how humans had survived ice ages, plagues, and disasters. They had crawled out of caves and reached the stars. "Mr. President," she said, "I believe that the Helix Confederation has made a terrible mistake. They see our small fleet and think we are weak. They see our quiet diplomacy and think we are scared. They do not understand what we are." "And what are we?" His eyes were cold now like winter sky. "We are the species that refused to die. We are the species that turned every disaster into a lesson. For 300 years we watched the galaxy. We learned. We prepared. And now those 1,500 ships are not trapping us. They have trapped themselves in a cage with something they do not understand." President nodded slowly. "Then we are agreed. Protocol Omega is activated." The words went out to every ship, every soldier, every scientist. Across Earth's defense network, lights turned from blue to red. Weapons that had been sleeping for centuries began to wake up. And in space, waited for humanity's surrender, completely unaware that he had just made what survivors would later call the worst error in galactic history. The countdown had begun. In 6 hours, the galaxy would learn why you should never corner a human. They were not good at surrender. They were only good at survival. The 6 hours passed, stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and waited for the humans to beg. He had done this many times before. The pattern was always the same. First, the small species would act brave. Then they would realize they could not win. Then they would cry and plead and offer everything they had. But the humans did not call. Check the time again. 6 hours and 15 minutes. Nothing. He tried to contact Earth, but nobody answered. His communications officers worked their machines, sending signal after signal into the silence. "Perhaps their equipment is broken," one of his officers suggested. "Perhaps they are stupid," said. He was starting to feel angry. This was not how things were supposed to go. He was Supreme Commander. Species begged him for mercy. They did not ignore him. "Fire warning shots at their moon," he ordered. "Show them we are serious." 3 of his largest ships turned their weapons toward Earth's moon. Beams of hot plasma shot across space and hit the surface. When the dust cleared, there was a new crater, 20 miles wide, glowing red with heat. On Earth, people could look up at night and see the scar. Smiled, now they would call, now they would understand. But the silence continued. On Earth, Admiral watched the moon attack from her underground command center. Around her, officers worked quietly at their stations. There was no panic. There was no fear. There was only focus. "They hit the moon," Lieutenant reported. "I saw," said. "Continue with the plan. Do not respond." "Admiral, some of the crew are asking why we are not fighting back." Stood up and walked to the center of the room. She wanted everyone to hear her next words. "We are fighting," she said. "We are fighting the most important battle of all. We are fighting their expectations. Right now is confused. He has conquered 47 worlds, and every single one of them reacted the same way. They panicked. They begged. They made mistakes. But we are doing something he has never seen. We are doing nothing." She pointed at the screen showing the alien fleet. "Look at them. See how they are arranged. Perfect formation. Every ship in its place. That formation works when the enemy does what they expect. But what happens when the enemy does not do anything? They have to wait. They have to wonder. And while they wonder, they get nervous." In space was indeed getting nervous. 7 hours had passed. Then 8. His officers were looking at each other with worried eyes. Some of the other species in his fleet were starting to ask questions. Why were the humans not surrendering? What did they know that the Confederation did not? "Sir," one of his captains said, "our soldiers are getting restless. They were promised a quick victory. They were told humans were weak and primitive." "Humans are weak and primitive," growled. "They have 80 ships. We have 1,500. The numbers do not lie." "Then why do they not surrender?" had no answer. On Earth, the final preparations were complete. Doctor stood in a massive underground facility, surrounded by machines that hummed with power. This was the heart of the solar lens array, humanity's greatest secret weapon. For 200 years, humans had been placing satellites around the sun. Millions of them, each one small and unnoticeable. But together, they could do something incredible. They could focus the sun's energy into a beam, like using a magnifying glass to start a fire. Except this fire could destroy anything. "Doctor, we are ready," her assistant said. Pushed her glasses up her nose and nodded. "Connect me to Admiral." A moment later's face appeared on her screen. "Doctor, is it time?" "The array is at full power. We can fire whenever you give the order." Took a deep breath. This was the moment. 300 years of preparation. Countless scientists, soldiers, and leaders who had worked their whole lives for this day. Most of them were dead now, but their work lived on. "Fire at the following coordinates," said. "Destroy the ships in Section 7 of their formation. Make it clean, make it fast, make them understand." Doctor entered the commands. In space, the satellites around the sun shifted slightly, turning like flowers following light. They aligned perfectly, creating an invisible lens millions of miles wide. And then the sun spoke. A beam of pure stellar fire shot across space. It moved at the speed of light, giving no warning, making no sound. It hit Section 7 of the Helix fleet like the finger of an angry god. 47 warships vanished. They did not explode. They did not break apart. They simply stopped existing. One moment they were there, and the next moment they were atoms scattered across the void. On the eternal conquest, every alarm screamed at once. Officers ran in circles. Screens showed nothing but error messages. Stared at the empty space where 47 of his ships had been. "What happened?" he screamed. "WHATHAPPNED." Then a transmission came through. A human woman appeared on his screen. She had calm eyes and a voice like cold steel. "This is Admiral of the United Earth Defense Force," she said. "That was a warning shot. You now have 6 hours to leave our system. If you stay, we will destroy your entire fleet. We will not repeat ourselves." The transmission ended. Stood frozen. In his 200 years of war, no species had ever spoken to him like that. No species had ever destroyed his ships so easily. No species had ever looked at him with such complete lack of fear. For the first time in his life, Supreme Commander felt something he had never felt before. He felt afraid. Fear turned to rage in his hearts. Yes, hearts. They had 3 of them, and all 3 were pumping hot blood through his body. He had been humiliated. He, the greatest commander in galactic history, had been threatened by insects, by humans, by creatures who had only been in space for a few centuries. "All ships," he roared into his communicator, "full attack, destroy Earth, destroy everything, leave nothing alive." His officers hesitated. "Sir, we lost 47 ships in seconds. Perhaps we should." "I said attack." The Helix fleet moved. 1,453 warships turned toward Earth and accelerated. Their weapons charged with deadly energy. Their soldiers prepared for invasion. This was the standard Helix strategy used for thousands of years. Overwhelming force from all directions. It had never failed. But the Helix had never fought humans. Admiral watched the fleet approach on her screens. She felt her heart beat faster, but her hands did not shake. Behind her, her officers waited for orders. "They are attacking," Lieutenant reported. "All ships moving toward Earth." "Good," said. "They did exactly what we expected. Wake up the children." Across the solar system, signals went out to places that seemed empty. Asteroids that looked like ordinary rocks, moons that appeared dead and lifeless, patches of space that showed nothing on any scanner. And then the children woke up. 2,000 human warships emerged from hiding. They had been there for decades, waiting in silence, their crews living in secret bases, training for this exact moment. But these were not ordinary warships. They were carriers, and they carried something special. Drones, millions of them. Lieutenant sat in her neural-link chair aboard the carrier Indomitable. Wires connected her brain directly to the ship's computer. When she closed her eyes, she could feel 50,000 drones like they were parts of her own body. She could see through their cameras. She could fire their weapons with a thought. "All pilots report status," came the order. 400 voices answered. 400 pilots, each one controlling tens of thousands of drones. Together, they commanded an army of 20 million machines. "Launch," Admiral commanded. Space filled with metal. The drones poured out of the carriers like water from a broken dam. They were small, each one no bigger than a car, but they were fast and deadly. They swarmed toward the Helix fleet in waves that blocked out the stars. Saw them coming and laughed. "Tiny machines, this is their secret weapon, destroy them." His ships opened fire. Plasma beams and missiles flew into the drone swarms. Thousands of drones exploded, then thousands more. But for every drone destroyed, 10 more took its place. They were everywhere, coming from every direction, filling every gap in space. The Helix ships were designed to fight other big ships. They had powerful weapons that could crack planets. But those weapons were slow. They could not turn fast enough to hit tiny targets moving at impossible speeds. It was like trying to kill a swarm of bees with a hammer. The drones reached the Helix fleet and began their attack. They did not try to destroy the big ships directly. Instead, they targeted weak points: engine exhausts, weapon ports, shield generators. Tiny explosions covered every warship like a disease of fire. "Our shields are failing," Captain screamed across the Helix communication network. "We cannot target them, there are too many. They are inside our formation." Lieutenant smiled as she guided her drones through the chaos. She had trained for this her entire life. Her father had been a drone pilot. Her grandmother had helped design the first neural link systems. 3 generations of her family had prepared for this battle. "Focus on the command ships," she ordered her squadron. "Cut off their heads." While the space battle raged, Captain led her team on a different mission. She stood in a small room aboard a stealth ship, surrounded by 12 of the best soldiers in human history. They wore black combat suits that could stop plasma bolts and carried weapons that could cut through any armor. "Target acquired," her pilot reported. "We are within teleportation range of the enemy flagship." Teleportation, another human secret. The galaxy believed it was impossible, just a dream from science fiction. Humans had been using it for 50 years. "Send us in," said. Reality twisted, colors blurred. For one horrible second, felt like she was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Then she was standing on the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, surrounded by shocked alien officers. They were big, they were strong. They had claws that could tear through metal, but they were also slow, and they had never faced a human soldier before. Moved like water. Her rifle fired 3 times and 3 guards fell. Her team spread out, their weapons singing death songs. In 15 seconds, every armed on the bridge was down. Turned to face her. He was massive, twice her height, with muscles that could crush stone, but walked toward him without fear. She pressed her rifle against his head. "Your fleet is dying," she said. "Your commanders are being captured or killed. Your soldiers are surrendering by the thousands. This battle is over." His red eyes burned with hate. "How? We had 1,500 ships, you had 80, the numbers." "The numbers you knew," interrupted. "You saw what we wanted you to see. You believed what we wanted you to believe. For 300 years, we let the galaxy think we were weak. We let you underestimate us. That was our greatest weapon." She leaned closer. "Your species has existed for 2 million years. You should have learned by now. Never corner a human. We do not know how to surrender. We only know how to survive." Outside the viewport, watched his fleet burn. Ships that had conquered worlds were being torn apart by tiny machines. The greatest military force in galactic history was being destroyed by creatures he had called insects. He finally understood his mistake. He had thought humans were prey hiding from predators. But they were not prey. They were predators too, and they had been hunting the Helix Confederation since the day they first looked at the stars. The battle lasted 11 hours. When it ended, the Helix fleet was gone. Humanity remained. And the galaxy would never be the same. The silence after battle is strange. For 11 hours, space around Earth had been filled with fire, screaming metal, and dying ships. Now there was nothing but floating wreckage and the quiet hum of human vessels moving through the debris. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Iron Will and looked at the final numbers. 1,247 Helix warships destroyed. 198 surrendered. 55 escaped into hyperspace. 40,000 alien soldiers captured, including Supreme Commander himself. Human losses: 32 ships destroyed, 817 soldiers dead. "It is over," Lieutenant said softly. She had disconnected from her neural link, and her face showed the exhaustion of controlling 50,000 drones for 11 hours straight. "No," replied. "The battle is over, but what comes next might be harder." On Earth, the bunkers opened. People walked out into sunlight that felt different somehow. The same sun, the same sky, but everything had changed. They were no longer a small species hiding at the edge of the galaxy. They had defeated the greatest military power in known space. In cities around the world, people looked up at the sky where the battle had happened. Some cheered, some cried, some simply stood in silence, trying to understand what this meant for their future. President did not celebrate. He sat in his office, staring at reports and thinking about the decision he had to make. 40,000 prisoners, 40,000 beings who had come to destroy his world. What should he do with them? His advisors had different opinions. General wanted military trials. They came to kill us. They should face justice. Others wanted revenge. Make an example of them. Show the galaxy what happens when you attack Earth. But Doctor said something different. We have proven we are strong. Now we must prove we are wise. President called Admiral to his office. She arrived still wearing her uniform, still carrying the weight of command on her shoulders. "Admiral, I need your advice," he said. "You led our forces to victory. What should we do with the prisoners?" Thought for a long moment. She remembered the faces of the soldiers who had died under her command. She remembered the fear she had felt when those 1,500 ships surrounded Earth. She had every reason to want revenge. "Mr. President," she said finally, "we have spent 300 years preparing for this war, but I think our ancestors also prepared us for what comes after." "What do you mean?" "They could have built a species of warriors. Instead, they built a species of survivors. And survivors know something important. Enemies can become friends. Wars can end. The galaxy is big enough for everyone." President nodded slowly. He made his decision. The next day, he addressed the galaxy. His message was broadcast to every planet, every station, every ship with a receiver. Trillions of beings watched the human leader speak. "People of the galaxy," he began, "3 days ago the Helix Confederation sent 1,500 warships to destroy my world. They failed. We could now take revenge. We could hunt down every species that supported this attack. We could become conquerors ourselves." He paused. Across the galaxy, beings held their breath. "But that is not who we are. Humans did not reach the stars because we were the strongest or the fastest. We reached them because we refused to give up. We reached them because we learned from our mistakes. And we reached them because we knew, deep in our hearts, that the universe is better when we work together. The prisoners will be returned. The surviving ships will be repaired and sent home. We do not want war with the Helix Confederation or anyone else. We want peace. We want trade. We want friendship. But hear me clearly. If you come to Earth in peace, you will find partners and friends. If you come to Earth in war, you will find what the Helix found. We are not sheep. We are not prey. We are humans, and we will never surrender. The message ended. Across the galaxy, reactions were mixed. Some species were angry. Some were afraid. But many, especially smaller species who had lived under Helix rule, felt something they had not felt in centuries. Hope. Ambassador traveled to the Helix capital to deliver the prisoners personally. She was a small woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who represented the species that had just defeated the galaxy's greatest power. The Helix Council received her in their grand chamber. Hundreds of representatives from dozens of species sat in a circle, staring at this tiny human who had walked into the heart of their civilization. "We bring your people home," said, all 40,000 of them, unharmed, fed, treated with dignity. "Why?" the council leader demanded. "We tried to destroy you. Why would you show us mercy?" Smiled. "Because destroying you was never our goal. We only wanted to be left alone. Now we want something more. We want to build a galaxy where species do not have to hide and prepare for war. A galaxy where strength is used to protect, not conquer." She placed a data device on the floor. "This contains a proposal, a new alliance built on equality and respect, not the Helix Confederation where you rule and others serve. Something better, something that could last forever." The council members looked at each other. They were not used to being offered friendship by those they had wronged. "Why should we trust you?" one asked. Smile faded, her eyes became hard. "Because the alternative is worse. You have seen what we can do. We destroyed your fleet in 11 hours. We have weapons you cannot imagine. If we wanted to conquer you, we could." She let that sink in. "But we do not want that. We want peace. This is your chance. Take it or leave it. But understand this, there will not be a second chance." She turned and walked out, leaving the council to make the most important decision in galactic history. They chose wisely. 5 years passed. The galaxy changed. The Helix Confederation dissolved quietly, like snow melting in spring. In its place rose the Galactic Cooperative, a true alliance where every species had an equal voice. There were no masters and servants. There were no conquerors and conquered. There were only partners, working together to explore the endless universe. Humanity was a founding member, but they did not seek to lead. They had proven their strength. Now they proved their wisdom by stepping back and letting others grow. Admiral retired from the fleet. She had given her life to the military, and now she wanted to give something else: knowledge. She became a teacher at the Earth Defense Academy, where young officers learned the art of war and the harder art of peace. Her most popular lecture was called The Doctrine of Prepared Patience. Students from 50 species came to hear her speak about how humanity had waited 300 years for a battle that lasted 11 hours. They learned that victory was not just about weapons and ships. It was about thinking further ahead than your enemy. It was about being ready for any future. "Patience is not weakness," told her students. "Patience is the greatest strength. Anyone can act in anger. Only the truly strong can wait until the moment is right." Lieutenant was now commander. She had received a new assignment, leading humanity's first deep space exploration fleet. For years, humans had stayed close to Earth, preparing for war. Now they could finally explore, finding new worlds and meeting new species. Her fleet was different from the old warships. These were vessels of peace, carrying scientists and diplomats alongside soldiers. They had weapons, because humans would never forget the lessons of the past, but those weapons were meant for protection, not conquest. Every few weeks her fleet discovered something amazing: new planets with strange life, ancient ruins from species that had died long ago, mysteries that would take centuries to solve, and always new species to meet. "We come in peace," would say each time. "We hope you do too." Most species were friendly, some were afraid, a few were hostile, but word had spread throughout the galaxy about what had happened to the Helix fleet. Nobody wanted to make the same mistake. Captain received a special assignment. She became Earth's military to the Galactic Cooperative, responsible for keeping peace between species and ensuring that the lessons of the war were never forgotten. She lived on the Cooperative's central station, a massive structure where representatives from hundreds of species worked together. It was strange at first, walking through halls filled with beings of every shape and size, but adapted. She always did. On her wall hung a curved blade, the ceremonial weapon of a commander. It had been a gift from himself. After his capture had been returned to his people in shame, his military career was over. His reputation was destroyed. For 2 years he had lived in isolation, refusing to speak to anyone. Then slowly he changed. He began studying humans, trying to understand how such a young species had defeated his ancient civilization. The more he learned, the more his shame turned to respect. He requested a meeting with. They talked for hours, two warriors from opposite sides of the universe, finding common ground. "I hated you," admitted. "I hated your species for what you did to my fleet, to my honor." And now asked, "Now I understand. You did not fight because you wanted to destroy us. You fought because you wanted to survive. There is no shame in losing to such a purpose." Became an unexpected advocate for human-alien cooperation. He traveled to worlds that feared humanity and told them the truth. Humans were dangerous, yes, but they were also fair. They would not attack without cause. They wanted friends, not subjects. In the galactic archives on the Cooperative's capital world, a historian named worked on the official record of the war. He was young, barely a century old, and he had not been alive when the battle happened. But he had spent years interviewing survivors, studying records, and trying to understand what had happened. Finally, his work was complete. He sat at his console, ready to enter the title that would become part of galactic history. He considered many options. The human victory? No, too simple. The fall of the Helix? No, too focused on the losers. The Battle of Earth? No, it was about more than one battle. Finally, he typed, "The Siege of Earth, worst strategic error in galactic history." He added a footnote. "Let this record serve as a warning to all who would mistake human kindness for weakness and human patience for fear. They did not conquer the stars because they had to. They conquered them because they chose to, and they chose to do it on their own terms." On Earth, in a quiet garden overlooking the city of Seoul, an old man sat with a young girl. President was no longer president. That title belonged to younger leaders now. He was simply grandfather, enjoying the last peaceful years of his life. His granddaughter was 7 years old. She was full of questions, the way all children are. "Grandfather, tell me about the war again." Smiled. He had told this story many times, but he never got tired of it. "Well, little one, it started when 1,500 ships surrounded our planet." "Were you scared?" "Terrified," he admitted, "but I knew something the aliens did not know." "What?" He looked up at the night sky, where human ships now traveled freely among the stars. Up there, Commander was exploring new worlds. Captain was keeping the peace. Admiral's students were learning to protect humanity. A whole galaxy was changing because of what humans had done. "I knew that humans do not fight because we think we can win," he said. "We fight because we refuse to accept that we cannot, and somehow that makes all the difference." Thought about this, then she asked another question. "Will there be another war?" Took her small hand in his old one. "Perhaps someday, but not in your lifetime, not if we are wise." The galaxy learned something 5 years ago. They learned that the most dangerous creature in the universe is not the strongest or the fastest or the oldest. "Then what is it?" He smiled, his eyes reflecting the starlight. It is the one that never gives up. Above them, the stars shone bright, countless worlds where humanity was now welcome. The cage that had once surrounded Earth was gone, replaced by endless possibility. The prisoners had become explorers, the survivors had become leaders, and the galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Never corner a human. They do not know how to surrender. They only know how to win.